Good afternoon, Miss Halvi and everyone. So today, me and my group members are going to present about our in-depth analysis of PT ADARO Energy Tbk. Our presentation consists of three parts. The first part is about the company overview, condensed forecast, and forecast assumption. The second part is about the equity valuation using the discounted dividend method. And the third part is the other aspects of the company, which include corporate governance, risk management, financial distress, and merger and acquisition. Before I begin the presentation, let me introduce me and my group member first. So my name is Muhammad Farhan Taib. I will be explaining the first part of the presentation. The second presenter is Shafira Barik. She will be explaining the second part of the presentation. And the third presenter is Saskia Alia. She will be explaining about the third part of the presentation. First, I will explain to you all briefly about PT ADARO Energy Tbk. PT ADARO Energy Tbk is one of the biggest coal mining and coal producers in Indonesia. Since 1966, ADARO has since developed their business outside of the mining sector. Their subsidiaries include water treatment plant, logistics, holding companies, power plant, and foundation. Next, I will show you about our condensed forecast. It consists of various accounts that would help in determining our valuation using the discounted dividend method. Next slide is our assumption to do the forecasting. The assumption itself consists of sales growth rate, NOPAT margin, net working capital to sales, net non-current operating assets to sales, investment assets to sales, and lastly, debt to capital ratio. All of these assumptions will be explained one by one in the next following slides. First one is sales growth rate of ADARO. So the sales growth rate in 2019 is 11.09%. For the forecast, our assumption is that the growth rate will be declining by 6% from 2019 to 2021. The declining growth rate in this case does not mean that the sales go down. It means that the growth will continue to go up, but declining in terms of the percentage. The changes in the growth rate might be affected due to two main factors: uncertainty of the coal demand and the coal price. These factors might not be accurate due to a coal price fluctuate over the years. Next, I am going to explain about the NOPAT margin. NOPAT is a crucial measure in the variety of financial analysis. It gives you a clearer view of the company's operating efficiency, a view that is clouded by how leveraged the company is or how big of a bank loan the company is able to get. NOPAT growth in 2018 is 3.08%, and we assume in 2019 the growth would actually decreasing to minus 3.93%, and in 2020 minus 0.83%. The decrease in ADARO NOPAT is mainly because of the increase in the operating expense and the cost of materials increase from 2017 to 2018. Thus, we assume that the expense would be higher in the next following years. Next, I am going to explain to you about the net working capital to sales assumption. So, working capital of ADARO consists of 5 elements. First is the cash, second is the trade receivables, third is the inventories, fourth is the trade payables, and fifth, the other current liabilities. In 2018, days payables and days receivables are 31 and 57 days, respectively, which is constant from the previous years. We assume that the number would stay the same for the next following years. Meanwhile, days inventories of ADARO in 2018 is increased from 8 to 9 days. The increase in days inventories might be due to uncertainty of demand of coal, which in turn lowering the sales. In the future, it is predicted that the days inventories would constantly increasing for the next 4 years. Next is the non-current operating assets to sales assumption. Non-current operating assets experienced a decrease during 2017, but during 2018 it increased by 5.3%. These changes in non-current operating assets happen due to a decrease in tangible and intangible asset, as well as an increase in the amount of long-term non-interest-bearing debt. These changes in non-current operating assets are often most contributable to changes in long-term non-interest-bearing debt, which is deferred income from lease transactions with related parties. Because this factor has no clear expectations, it is assumed that the growth of non-current operating assets will be constant with an average increase of 6% per year. Next, I am going to explain about the investment assets to sales assumption. So there is an increase in non-operational investment assets in 2017 due to an increase in the number of investment properties and investment associates. While in 2018, there was a decrease in non-operational investment assets due to a decline in the value of investment assets. It is assumed in the year 2019 to 2022 while the growth of investment assets will be constant by an average of 6% per year, the amount of investment assets will be increasing because the sales projection of ADARO is increasing. Next, I am going to explain about the debt to capital ratio. Debt to capital is an important measure to identify how much a company is dependent on its debt to finance its day-to-day activities and to estimate the risk level to a company's shareholder. The debt to capital of ADARO is in 2018 is 0.34%, and the assumption is that for the rest 4 years, the debt to capital will be constant by the amount of 0.33%. This is due to the fact that while the debt of ADARO is projected to increase in the following years, the capital would also be increasing, so it doesn't affect both ways. The debt to capital ratio of ADARO is below 1, meaning that the debt of levels of manageable and the ADARO is considered less risky to invest or loan, given other factors are taken into consideration.
Hi, I'm Saskia, and I would like to present about the CAPM, discounted dividend method, and the discounted cash flow method. Now, let's move on to the CAPM. And in the year of 2018, CAPM for ADARO describes the relationship between systematic risk and expected return for assets. In the formula, we get the value of RF as 4.95% from ADARO obligation fixed rate of 17 to 19 years, while for the RM is equal to 8.77%. Both RM and RF indicates the risk premium, which is the higher the risk premium of the company, the riskier of the market will be. Okay, the next CAPM component that we need to consider is beta, as we know that beta measures the systematic risk and the volatility of the company. In this calculation, we get the value of beta for 1.27, which indicates that the company is in moderate risk. Lastly, the result of the CAPM is 9.82%, indicate the return that the company get from investing is market premium, which will give the company 9.82% return on asset. And now let's move on to the DDM method. In this method, we suggest to maintain buy as the stock is trading at undemanding valuation. Nonetheless, diversification into choking coal and power plants will help to sustain the company's earnings in the long run. Our target price is around 2,000 rupiah, using the assumption of the average growth rate with the average dividend growth rate of 9.80% for each year, with the assumption that in the future the dividend is still distributed. Second is to calculate the present value of the dividend for each forecasted year using the estimated dividend and stable percentage dividend growth rate for 10.02%. We strongly recommend to use the DDM method as our main calculation and valuation, since ADARO constantly distribute dividend each year and to see the perspective from minority shareholders. Now let's move on to the discounted cash flow method. High target price is the result from calculation with the discounted cash flow method. With this method, our target price becomes way too high compared with the DDM method, which is for this method is around 9,000 rupiah. From our analysis, this happened because the volatility of world coal price that affect ADARO's selling price of coal, which in this case will affect its cash flow statement. Therefore, we strongly recommend to not use this method as our main calculation and valuation, since we cannot predict the exact future market condition.
Okay, now I'm going to explain the other aspects, which consist of the first one, its merger and acquisition. In 2016, ADARO acquired the BHP Billiton with the value of 120 million Australian dollars, with the ownership of 100% of their asset. And from this acquisition, ADARO benefits from this perspective of environment, and as well as they produce 0.93 milliton and sold 0.81 millitons from out of it. And on 2018, ADARO also completed the acquisition of the Kestrel coal mine with the value of 488,106, with the ownership of 80% of their interest. And the benefit is pretty obvious because 79% from their total sales contribution from the subsidiaries is acquired from the Kestrel mining. And absolutely, the motivation from this acquisition is to expand their coal mining location and increase the coal production and sales. By acquiring, they require less cost, thus they are able to take advantage of economies of scale and increasing product market range. From the point of view of the financial distress, we're using the calculation of the amount, and the score didn't show even any close score to the bankruptcy. However, the financial stresses has shifted from 2017 to 2018. It has decreased, but not really significant, and it didn't shift into the gray area category. And the major changes occurred to the market value of equity divided by book value of total liability, with changes of 0.85 due to extreme decreased market price, which is almost doubled. It is concurrent with diminishing net profit on 2018, along with higher non-operating expense of 111 million to acquire 80% ownership to Castrol. Other than that, their operating expense also intensified on stripping costs by 27.8 Australian dollar per ton. And to analyze their ability to cover their debt, we're using the debt covenant ratio. The asset and equity that was being financed by creditors constantly decreased from 2016 to 2018, and their EBIT is still much higher to cover its interest expense. Even though the numbers are decreasing from 2017 to 2018 due to the Castrol acquisition, overall ADARO is not highly dependent on their debt for operating, thus their likelihood to default is low. Next, we're going to see the qualitative aspects from the corporate governance and risk management to ensure that the data provided on their financial statement is reliable. The first one is their corporate governance. They have the whistleblowing mechanism, insider trading, anti-corruption, and anti-fraud. And this mechanism could absolutely grant others accountability on disclosing information. And in order to aim fairness and independence, ADARO ensured to determine fair transactions and balances with related parties, and also selecting their suppliers. For transparency and responsibility are shown on information accessibility, which are provided on the website and audited by the reliable company, which is the Tanu Direja Wibisana Rintis and Partners. Other than that, they have promising bureaucracy with the BOD and BOC in making decision to protect stakeholders. Overall, ADARO has qualified 5 principles of good corporate governance. For their risk management, those are divided into 3. The first one, they have the external environmental risk, operational risk, and organizational risk to make sure that all of their business part are covered by risk management. As of December 2018, there are 9 types of risk, which were categorized as high and the key risk, in which 2 out of these were new risks categorized as key risks, which are macroeconomic risk and security threat risk, while investment risk level decreased from high to moderate. And compared to previous year, the number of risk remains the same, which is 20 types of risk. To conclude, ADARO's share price will remain fluctuative, but in a good way, which are caused by the first one is the successful merger and acquisitions with Castrol and BHP that increased their sales from subsidiaries and of course increased their ownership to take more coal and sold more coal from the productions of those 2. And the second one is there's no indication to bankrupt. Using the Z-Altman score, we already seen that their market value to book equity per liability is getting larger, and their sales per total assets also large, and it means that they're in a good hand. And even though they have debt, they still can cover their debt using the debt covenant, which shows no indication of really stressful debt conditions. And all in all, we would recommend you to maintain or buy the investment on ADARO. Thank you so much for watching us.